everybody, JJ Cooper, Carlos Collazo, Baseball America Draft Podcast. A fun one today. We are getting close. The draft is a little over a week away as we record this. We're recording this on July 2nd. At this time next week, I will be almost to Philadelphia. I'm going to do a bounce around. I think I'll be at a Worcester game on Thursday, potentially.
Nice.
Because I think I'm going to the Cape Cod League on Wednesday. First time I've ever been to the Cape.
You know, I'm very jealous of you, JJ. I have never been to the Cape either. I'd love to go. It always feels like we have other people on staff who are there and going, and it's like I could go watch other high school players, but the Cape sounds amazing, so that'll be great.
So I'm going to do that. That'll be I don't have many things. I got to be honest. I'm very fortunate. I do not have many things left on the baseball bucket list, and that's one. So I will not.
Have you been to Omaha?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I've never done that.
Definitely been to Omaha. The big ones left for me are I want to go to Japan and see MPB games, but also probably as much Koshin.
The high school. Yep.
High school. I want to see the best high school baseball tournament in the world. There's a part of me that wants to go to see the midnight sun game in Alaska, but at the same time, I mean, that's one of those where it's like, it'd be really cool. But I also, I have volunteered to go to the high school All-American game at the Field of Dreams this year. So I'll knock that out.
That's a good one too.
And after that, like I want to get to, I'm not at all 30 MLB parks yet, but I'm getting close. So All-Star game, World Series, Rule 5 draft, Futures game, WBC. So yeah, I've not much left. Pretty cool.
Nice.
But what we are going to talk about today, I feel like that we talk a lot about, okay, who's going one to the White Sox? How does the top of the draft line up? But we rank 500 players. There are 500 scouting reports up at Baseball America. Really, there are 575 or 565 or so.
Even more than that. We got high school players, a 500 list of high school players. We got a college list that's getting out to 100. We're going to have more than, well over.
We will have more players written up than will get drafted. We will not get 100% because there will be players drafted who we haven't written up yet, but a lot. So what we want to do today is kind of acknowledge that there's a whole lot of draft after round ones and round two. And that's what we're going to do today is kind of talk about some of the names. It's going to be the Carlos show today. I'm going to let him kind of run with this because these are a lot of these names. I'll interject, but he's got more background on a lot of these guys than I do. So we're going to be talking about really like third through late round pick, a couple of names to watch in each of those rounds. And this will be really fun because, again, these are guys who there's something very interesting here, but at the same time, we'll probably get in a little bit also why they may still be on the board in these rounds. So this is where a lot of future stars are found, but at the same time, the miss rate goes way up because that's why they're getting picked a little bit later in the draft. But we're going to dive straight into this, Carlos, looking at some third round names to watch. So what we mean by this is we're talking, I don't have the draft order in front of me right now. You might be pulling it up as I'm filibustering, but I'm going to say off the top of my head, I'm guessing that's going to be picks like 80 on. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's right around mid 70s to 100 is kind of the third round range. And these are players who I'd say for this conversation, it's like players that we have ranked in this range who are really interesting to us in one way or another. Either we maybe like them more than that range where we see them in the industry, or they're like really interesting traits to build on. And so every player in these round ranges, that's where we have them ranked. I would say like our precision to say they're definitely going to go there falls apart once we go further, but yeah, go ahead.
Let's expand on this a little bit too, because I think this is something useful to know, right? Yeah. We're trying to, as best we can, how we're hearing that these players line up. We're getting feedback on that's a third round player, that's a fourth round player. And there are 100%, there are players, like we were talking about a player, not one of the ones we're going to talk about today. And it's like, there seem to be about 5 teams who think that this is a second round talent. And then the majority of the industry thinks of this as more of a third to fourth round talent.
Right.
Well, where that player is going to go, there's no guarantee that one of those 5 teams is going to pull the trigger. But if they do, then that's going to be a player who goes in the second round.
Right.
But when we rank that player, we're going to rank them more in that third round range because we're trying to incorporate the fact that there are teams who think this player is higher. But basically what we're saying there's the range for that player is second to fourth round. And we think he fits as kind of a third round talent. There are players who sometimes you will have a player who 29 teams out of 30 think is a certain round or more lower. But if it only takes one.
Yep.
And then especially also when you throw in that we are in a bonus pool situation where you may also see a situation where it's like I used a couple of years ago, like, the Padres took Hudson Potts with their first pick, but at the same time, I believe that Hudson Potts ended up being like their fourth highest bonus in that class. Yep. And he was a high school kid too. It wasn't like something where you had the senior sign go first or something like that. There's also the reality of bonus, demands and all fit in this. It's something where when we see that we have a player ranked 68th and they go 68th, that's almost like a lucky coincidence more than it is, because
my favorite one was a few years ago. It wasn't the exact number, but a few years ago, our number BA 500 went with the final pick of the actual draft. And I just don't think that'll ever happen again. So I might pull that up at some point and find the exact player name, but it was like 2 or 3 years ago, I think. But yeah, so let's get into the players.
Okay. First player we're going to talk about, one that we both are very well. And I think a lot of people listening to that, if you're listening to the Baseball or Draft podcast, we already know you're smarter than the average fan. Jaxon DeCaro, right-hander at North Carolina, prominent ace of the Carolina staff that went deep, obviously very deep at Omaha, 1 win short of a national title. But what is it about DeCaro that stands out to you in a positive way? Let's start with that, Carlos.
Yeah, I think for DeCaro and maybe his performance helping UNC in the Super Regionals against Southern California, where he threw a complete game shutout, maybe we'll move him up into the second round range on draft day. If he went in the second, I wouldn't be surprised. But I feel like DeCaro checks a lot of the boxes you're looking for in a ready-made college starter. Like, the more I've dug into his profile over the last few weeks and months of the season, the more I really am just fascinated with what he's done, the tools he has to work with, and then some of the tweaks I think that are going to be open for teams to tinker with to help him maybe get to the next level. But he's very young. He was just 17 years old when he took on a full-time starting role with North Carolina in 24 during his freshman season. And he probably has one of the largest samples of starting track record in college baseball. Every season, he has started at least 16 games. Every season, he's thrown at least 80 innings. He finished his career with 270.1 innings with a 3.46 ERA across that. I think that alone makes him interesting. Doing that in a power conference probably isn't like an automatic, hey, we're looking at you in the top 3 rounds, almost like regardless of the stuff you're throwing. And I think he's got a solid pitch mix to back up that performance and just the volume that he's thrown. He's got a fastball that sits 92, 93. He's been up to 96. He's done a really nice job throwing that pitch for strikes. He's got a changeup. He's got a curveball. He's got a slider. I think he's confident enough in those pitches to where he has a distinct attack versus lefties and righties. We've heard most scouts like the changeup more than his other secondaries. But I just think he's just like a very reliable starter who can hold a lot of innings. He's got a workhorse frame. I don't know if I mentioned his size, but he's 6'5", 230 pounds. So yeah, he just checks a lot of boxes for me. And I'm sure you're going to ask about it, but like, what's the question with him? I think it's like, he probably doesn't lack a true wipeout offering right now. I think there are some scouts that I've talked to say, hey, like, we like everything he does right now. And we also think that he doesn't really utilize his lower half as efficiently as we could help him. And so if that allows him to throw harder at the next level, if maybe getting more in sync with his delivery allows him to improve his slider or his curveball, and he can develop a plus pitch, you really have a pretty well-rounded pitching prospect that I don't see an obvious flaw in his game. So I've really found myself liking DeCaro's profile. I've been trying to scoop him up in all of our staff drafts in the last few weeks. I just got him in our recent one, a little spoiler for our next staff draft. So yeah, I really like this profile.
What I would say with that is this is where it's going to be an interesting, I think, as you noted, like really his fastball, and it seems, again, crazy for me to say this, but because I used to remember that was not the case, but 90, like you said, he sits at a level that if it continues there, he will have a velocity-wise, a below average. I wouldn't go well below average, but a below average fastball velocity-wise for a starter.
Right.
As you said, this is where this is, I think, going to be fascinating with him. The approach you can take is this is a guy who has exceptional durability. Like you said, he has taken the ball every time and been good. Like he hasn't been like, oh yeah, but he had that month where he just was completely lost.
Yeah,
steady. He just goes out there and is good time after time and over. There's the durability, there's the consistency, all that. And so if you want to, you could say, oh, and he's unoptimized right now. We're going to get his delivery where we think that there's more velocity in there once he kind of unlocks his lower half better, all that. The risk, I think, with that is like, is that going to unlock him? Or, we see examples of pitchers like the Red Sox took Kyson Witherspoon and, in like his offseason, he was like, I'm going to try things differently. And all of a sudden he had a dead zone fastball that was actually velocity-wise no better, maybe a little bit worse. And he had to go back to his old system. And once he did, then he's been a better pitcher. We moved him back to the top 100. But it's like, okay, there's no guarantees. Like, this is going to be a fun debate, I would say, within organizations. Do you believe that he's unoptimized now and there's so much more potential? Or do you risk kind of breaking what has made him work?
Right. Yeah, I think there are some traits with his extension, with his release, with his fastball shape that, in addition to the velocity you mentioned, could maybe be further questions. Like, despite his frame and his size, he has below average extension kind of across the board. I don't think that he has the sort of release height that are going to help him maybe mitigate that. And I guess release height and extension are often kind of correlated together. So those would be some of the areas, like delivery, some release questions. But I also think, like, with the breaking balls, he has really impressive ability to spin the ball. Like, the spin rates of both his slider and curveball are high. He gets near 2,900, 3,000 range with his curveball, a little bit lower than that with the slider. I just think there are a lot of really solid tools to work with. I'm not saying that Jason DeCaro is going to become a mid-rotation starter, but if you get a really solid number 4, number 5, I think that is perfectly like an easy path for me to see with him. And I think the youth and innings that he has really give me a lot of confidence and comfort with him.
Well, and it also is like, I just made that sound like it was a binary choice. There's also the possibility that you could see if you could unlock more. And you always, like, he has this delivery already well imprinted in his muscle memory. So if you try something, it's like, that didn't work, you can probably revert back to what he had done before. So you, it's not like something where it's like if you go down that road, you've burned all the bridges behind you. So that's the interesting one. There is another third round name who also was quite prominent in Omaha, Camden Johnson, third baseman at Oklahoma. And I kind of brought him up. He's one I wanted to talk about. And I say this because I think he's really interesting in the third round range. Okay, positives are this is an exceptional athlete, I would say, especially for an infielder, and a successful one. Like, this was a key player on the national champions. Really good athlete. Like, there's athleticism in the family. You see it with him. He makes highlight reel plays at third base. He's played elsewhere as well. Like, I think you could say he's a third baseman. You could say that he's a third baseman, or he's a second baseman, or he's an outfielder if you need it. Or he's a little bit of all.
I would say I kind of was assuming he was going to move to the outfield, but then he's made a couple of really impressive plays at third base where I was like, oh, okay, maybe you keep him on the dirt for a while. I think that generally is more valuable than outfield, but with his range alone and athleticism, he was a really talented receiver in high school, and I think that generally lends itself pretty well to a transition to the outfield. You mentioned the athletic bloodlines of his family. His father was a rugby player at Texas Tech. He had multiple athletic uncles. One is a member of the College Football Hall of Fame. The other is Joe Driscoll, who played in the NFL. Like, he is athletic himself and comes from a very athletic family, so that's an excellent starting point. He's one of the better runners in this class. What do you think about him offensively?
Like, the reason he's a third rounder is, how much offensive impact? Because it's not, I should be clear, like, he's a left-handed hitter with some bat to ball skills, but it's a pretty level, like, ground ball approach. There's not a lot of, even with a metal bat, there hasn't been a lot of impact there. You would expect that there'll be less with the wood bat. And that's where I think it does, like, the write-up, I think you wrote him up for us. Like, the write-up kind of does lay it out that it's probably more of a utility profile than it is like an everyday regular. And I know that someone's hearing this and saying, and you like him in the third round? Yes, because
go back and look at the drafts. I was talking about this on a couple of just like being guests on shows, talking about the draft as we get closer, but maybe it's useful for this point in the conversation. But if you go look at most drafts, I was having this conversation with Scouts the other day at the field, but like resetting expectations or just like trying to create like realistic expectations for what is a good outcome in the draft. Once you get beyond about 15 or so in any given draft that you're redrafting with hindsight, putting the best players in the order they should have gone in the first round, you run out of regular everyday impact players quicker than you might think. If you're picking in the back of the first round and you're thinking, oh, we've got a 25th overall pick, like I hope to get someone with like all-star potential, your expectations are probably a little bit too high for that draft. Like, it's not to say you can't get a player there. They certainly do, but it just going off of like historical draft outcomes, those should be your expectations. If you get a contributing big leaguer in the third round, that's a win.
2018, just because I feel like that's 8 years ago.
Yeah.
That's kind of the perfect range of like, we know what these guys are, right?
Right.
Let's just use that for infielders. Cody Clemens, Carlos Cortez, Owen Miller, Connor Kaiser. Cal Raleigh was the catcher in that class. That third rounder.
There you go.
Thumbs up. Ford Proctor ended up converting to catcher. Mateo Gil, Terran Vavra, Jeremy Pena. Okay, that one turned out really well. Richie Palacios. So there are a number of guys there like, okay, yes, you would prefer to take the big swings and land your Cal Raleigh or Jeremy Pena.
And I would say Jeremy Pena, it wasn't a big swing at the time. He really changed his profile, his power. He was like I mean, his profile, I would have to go back and read his report, but I'm sure he read like a potential utility guy, could play defense, make some contact, and then was better offensively than I thought.
And that's the point I wanted to make with this is what I like about this is you're kind of banking on the athleticism, the grit to kind of give you some development down the road, like that. You're not getting the player what he's going to be at 26 when when you're drafting him, and the defensive ability, the athleticism, the bat to ball skills kind of give you a nice baseline as you develop this. Like if you wanted to get, this is damning with faint praise, but like Gage Workman, got to do the Tigers, but he just made it up with recently. He was a Rule 5 pick last year, made it up this year with the Tigers again. Or Trey Cruz, also Rice, guy from a few years ago. Like these are guys who kind of hung around in the minors, but eventually start to figure it out. And you say, well, why did they start to figure it out? Because they've been valuable enough defensively, and they can pretty much play anywhere across the diamond. And that keeps you around long enough to maybe figure it out to where, you start to become that guy. Again, Richie Palacios is a good example of this, where you stick around long enough and you go, okay, I'm starting to figure out as a hitter, but you've earned that. You've avoided those decision points where in year 4 or year 5 of your career, they're like, we're good with you now. Thank you. We're going to move on to another direction. So that's a look at 2 guys from the third round. Right after this quick break, we will be back to talk about a couple of fourth round names to know.
Hey, SeatGeek is MLB's official ticket marketplace. And in addition to finding every single game on the MLB calendar, there are big events coming up very soon.
There's an all-star game. There's a home run derby. And if you think you're perfect and you can pick the right seat at the home run derby to get the most home run balls, you can get the little green dot, and that might be your lucky seat. Don't go red dot, though, because you might not get any balls. But go green dot and get as many home run balls as you think you can catch.
Yep. You click the seat. You check out what your view is. Each ticket's rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. And that's what AJ's talking about. Green good, red bad, with those dots. And the code for you, Territory10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any MLB tickets with promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description of this episode. That'll help you download the app and get the code automatically added to your account so that you can use it later. Thank you to SeatGeek.
And we're back. And so looking at fourth round names to watch, now we're talking, you are now in the triple digits. These are pick numbers that are going to be in the low triple digits, but you are now in the 100+ range here. But again, as we just said, like there are absolutely, we just gave examples of that in the third round for, where you can find a Jeremy Pena, you can find a Cal Raleigh. There are names to be found in here. The first one that you wanted to talk about was Elliot Lascelles, shortstop, Team C, another Canadian. We've seen a lot of Canadians kind of really stepping up. Eric Hartman, Nathan Flewelling, a pair of guys who really blossomed this year already. What is it about Elliot that really stands out to you?
I feel like there is a smoothness and an ease to Elliot's game that is very appealing to me. When writing up his report and talking to scouts about him and watching video to familiarize myself with him, again, it's just one of these players that I feel like the more you watch him, the more he grows on you. He is this standout athlete who has a lot of contact skills. He's got a lot of projection to his frame. He's 6'2". He's lean. He's 190 pounds. I think in the batter's box, he's got great balance. It's a very compact, direct swing to the ball that does not have a lot of moving parts. And I think he just has a really impressive feel for the zone and an advanced approach. I'm uncertain of how much power he's going to get to in the future. I think a lot of that will depend on like how the body progresses. And I'm not expecting him to get to above average, like 20 plus homers. I think if he winds up with like 15 homers a season, that would be like a great outcome for what I believe his pure hitting ability, his on-base skills to be, and his shortstop actions. He's a plus runner. I think he looks the part at a middle infield position. I think he has enough arm strength to stick at the position. And maybe like the cherry on top of his profile is he's gotten some time in the MLB draft league this summer, and he's hit really well. He's hit 394, 523, 545 in 9 games, 44 plate appearances, 10 walks, 3 strikeouts. We don't have a huge history of the MLB draft league, but I think even just getting that summer exposure is good. And seeing those numbers.
If I can note, that is the second best OPS in the draft league so far.
Is Gunnar Skelton the top guy? I know he's
Dominic Pellegrin.
Okay. Oh, well, that's another defensive shortstop I really love, who I'd be more excited about. So maybe we'll tack him on. That's your bonus player that I like as well for even later. But yeah, Elliot, between everything I just mentioned, the performance in the draft league, Team Canada does a great job getting their players exposure against pro arms. And I think teams have seen him a lot against more advanced pitchers than most high school hitters face. And he's acquitted himself nicely. And so I just think this is a well-rounded package for a young player who just turned 18 in February. It's just a well-rounded, smooth. Like this is a player who, if he went to pro ball and performed, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him like rocket up lists. Like this would be like a breakout kind of pick for me.
And again, it can work the other way too. But we have seen a number of Canadian players. You could argue very much have like more development to go than most because of the cold weather. They're outside less. But at the same time, the flip side of that is that the Canadian, National Federation, Greg Hamilton puts together kind of these Canadian teams. There's also Langley Blaze and all that make a point of coming down to, and they end up playing really kind of above level competition a lot of times.
Yeah, they do a really good job.
So it's not as much of like, but isn't that taking a risk on a player who, no, you've actually, a lot of cases, seen them against, if even just not just age appropriate, but sometimes like this is what we're talking about the draft league. Team Canada down there. There's a Canadian team and a Mexican team in the draft league kind of setting this up. So that's where it's interesting on that one. This one, I also, I think I may have gotten a chance to write up this one, at least at one point when we were doing updates. And yes, when you say Peyton Bonds, the outfitter from Rutgers, we will start with, that's not a coincidence, that name.
It's the Bonds you're thinking
actually,
of.
That is, yes, this is related to Barry, related to Bobby, Peyton Bonds.
Yeah, son of 11-year pro, Bobby Bonds Jr., nephew of the home run king, Barry Bonds. And I think Peyton is interesting because he is maybe a swing change away from being a really impactful player who we would not be talking about as a 100-plus ranked commit. I think his tool set in athleticism fits inside the first 3 rounds. There are just questions about his offensive approach and his ability to lift the baseball. If you watched the combine or saw our coverage of the combine or just looked at our combine StatCast leaderboard, there's no question that Peyton Bonds can hit the ball incredibly hard. I think he has plus raw power right now. He has never hit more than 6 home runs in a season. And I think there are a few question marks and reasons for that. One is his approach is extremely aggressive. He likes to swing the bat. He expands the zone a lot. Because of that, that's going to lead him to suboptimal contact, swinging in suboptimal counts, just getting himself into positions where he's not going to be able to drive the ball. Additionally, when he does make contact, I think a lot of his best contact is too frequently on the ground. And so for some teams, they maybe would just look at those two traits and say, no, we don't want any part of that. It's going to be hard to fix. I do think that for a team who's willing to take a shot, there are really exciting skills to build on. His overall contact rates, his in-zone contact rates are pretty exciting to me. He's a great runner. I think he could be a really good defender in center field. Again, I think he's going to need to improve defensively. He's been a tremendous base runner in his career. He's stolen at a 90% plus success rate in his 3 years in college. So I think there's just this really exciting athleticism, power, physical combination. He's 6'5", 230 pounds. Like, there's a lot to dream on here. And if you are a team who does a good job with fixing swings or helping players adjust their approaches, this is a no-brainer to me in terms of, like, as Peter Flaherty would have said with us, a ball of clay to work with offensively. I know he probably used that for pitchers more, but I just love the ability to dream on upside here with Peyton.
The thing that stands out to me here is, it's like you said, he is aggressive, but it's not an aggression that leads to high K rates. It's an aggression where he hit, and it's also not something where it's like, well, that's why he hit 270. He's a guy who has hit for average, has this year had a 21 Ks in 36 games, 142 at bats. We don't have PAs on their stats for Rutgers, but it's a modest home K rate. As you said, there's athleticism, and he is 6'5", 230 as well. So we're not talking about, oh, this is a singles hitter, and you look at him and go, well, yes, Nick Madrigal's probably never going to get to a whole lot of power. Look at who he is. This is the opposite of that. This is a guy who you look at and say, wait, he didn't hit 20 homers this year? How? Kind of thing. So I do think that, again, this is where scouting gets really fun, is you get to this rate, and that you're generally going to be taking someone who there's a reason they're still here, but then you start dreaming on what they can be. And again, not all these will turn out, but some of them will. Rolling on to the 5th round and names to watch. Again, another name that if you have been paying attention, I think if you pay attention to the draft or you pay attention to college baseball or both, you're probably going to say, yes, I know who Jaxon Willits, Oklahoma shortstop, is. Another guy from the national championship team, older brother of 1-1 pick last year, Eli Willits, who's gone out and had a very strong start to his pro career. I guess I'm going to start with a little different question this time. Mm-hmm. How is Jaxon like his brother, and how is he different from his brother, do you think, as a prospect? Both shortstops, obviously.
I think they both have very well-rounded games. I think they are very heady, instinctual baseball players that you maybe would expect of the sons of a baseball coach at a high level. I think they're both players where it's difficult to point out like a glaring flaw in their game. I do think at the same stage, and even now comparing the two, there is a different level of twitch that Eli has that maybe Jaxon doesn't have. That is probably the reason that he ranks where he does. I think in some ways, Jaxon Willits is like the opposite of a profile of a Peyton Bonds who we just talked about. The reason why I really like Peyton Willits is because he Jaxon does, or Jaxon, Jaxon Willits. If I combine the two, that'd be maybe a first round.
Sign me up.
Jaxon Willits. Every time I watch him, and I said this to Jacob after the first week of the season, we got to see him, and I was just like, man, I really just come away impressed from Jackson's ABs. I feel like he never gives away an at-bat. It's always competitive. He sees the ball well. I like his takes. This maybe is weird to say, but like whenever I come away from watching a hitter and I find myself liking their takes, I'm like very excited about their approach offensively. I don't know that Jaxon Willits has a single above average tool, JJ, but I think he just always competes. He's one of those like he's greater than the sum of his parts sort of players. And he definitely got a little bit more traction after his performance in the College World Series. He was the most outstanding player in that tournament. And again, I don't know if he sticks at shortstop. I think the actions and just the range might be a little bit short for the position, but he's very reliable defensively. He's not a burner, but he can move fine. He's an instinctive runner on the bases. I don't think he's going to have a ton of power. I think it's more doubles oriented, but we have seen some of these players in the past who just do everything really well. And if the hit tool is solid, I think that plays. Like the lack of explosive tools isn't a limiting factor if you can do everything well. And I think Jaxon just might be the sort of player who does everything well. Maybe he can play third base, second base for you in addition to stints at shortstop. Maybe he just sticks at shortstop because he's such an instinctual player. I just really think he's well-rounded. He's safe. I would think about him myself in the second round. Maybe some teams would look around and say, there's not enough juice here for that, which I would understand. But yeah, again, you probably have these players where if you watch them for one BP or one game, maybe they don't blow you away. But after watching them for a few weeks, you're like, man, he just always is in the right spots. He's making things happen. He's just a smart baseball player.
Okay, I'll throw out a comp for him who's a fifth rounder. Longer time ago, 2016, but Nicky Lopez.
Okay.
Who was at Creighton. And again, I remember writing him up at the time, and it was like well-rounded, heady player. You could say that the tools were kind of okay rather than great. And again, this is all of us trying to recalibrate to the level. Like, so that's a fifth round pick. And I'm sure that some out there are going, Nicky Lopez, is that really, you're excited about that? And it's like, well, if you look in the 2016 fifth round, you should be, because that's one of the best players taken in the fifth round. Like that may be like the other competition for that is Kevin Biggio and Abraham Toro and Donnie Walton and guys like that. So yeah, like I do think that in the fifth round, even in the fourth round, that would not be something where you're like, oh yeah, that was just not a good pick.
8-year big league career, six B WAR. I think people might be surprised by if you could guarantee that career, how high a player like that would actually go in the draft.
Again, we're trying to recalibrate the realistic ones. Like when you even in day one of the draft, when you are hearing names called and they're like, oh, this guy has, yes, we do hope that some of these guys go on to have Hall of Fame type careers. If you get one or two of those out of a draft, that's a good draft. If you get three, it's a great draft. There's not many of those in a draft. So that's our fifth round name. We're going to have sixth and a little bit later round guys to talk about too, right after another break. So Carlos, sixth round names to watch. We are now talking about, okay, the draft, we are now on date. We are well into day 2 now. This is where the picks are going to be flying a lot quicker than they were on day 1. But there still are going to be players who get taken. There's a name that you want to talk about here, which I'll tell you this. If you took the aspects of his first name, Andruw, with a U, and then aspects of his last name, Giles, as in Brian Giles, outfitter from Basic High School in Henderson, Nevada, what is it about Andruw Giles that stood out to you?
Yeah, and I would say for this one, I'll just reinforce that we have him as a 6th round talent. I do think him signing in the 6th round might be a little bit unlikely because it sounds like he might be a tough commit out of Oregon. So it could take some draft mechanics or maybe just a big overslot deal to get him here. I would be really excited about a team trying to sign him out of that commitment because he has this really instinctual hitting approach. And I think what pushes him further down the board here is probably the tweener nature of his outfield profile. He is 5'11", 180 pounds, maybe 6 foot. He doesn't have the loud power or just prototypical size that you would expect for a pro corner outfielder. I don't think that he has the speed or the no doubt defense of a no doubt center fielder at the next level. He's a solid runner who has turned in 55 grade, occasional plus run times. Most scouts I've talked to think he'll settle in as a solid average runner. And so everything about him feels like this, not quite fast enough to be a center fielder, not quite big enough to be a corner outfielder. So teams are very hesitant of those tweener high school outfield profiles. I think what's going in a positive direction for him is when he hits left-handed, that helps with that profile. I think the high school right tweener outfield profile is a little bit sketchier than the left-handed hitting one, which Giles is. But he has just a very functional swing. Again, we talked about a couple hitters that I like here who have compact, direct swings. He has that well. He has the ability to hit to all fields. I think he sees the ball well for his age. And I think there is more power here than you might expect of a player of his size. Like, he has shown impressive raw power already in high school from foul pole to foul pole. I think his approach is very much seems geared towards being a hitter first, which means you're not going to see the power flash as much. And I think seeing the power for his profile is probably something that would give teams a lot more confidence. But I also feel like Giles is just the sort of hitter who has the strength and the natural hitting ability to where he's going to come into that power naturally as he improves at the next level. But the way I hear scouts talk about just the swing mechanics that he has right now makes him a super interesting player for me. And I'll be really curious if someone like takes a shot on him and tries to sign him out of school, because I think it's just really exciting hitting ingredients.
As you said, again, it's less, in that case, it's going to be less about round position, that it's going to be about the amount of money that a team has because of what they've done elsewhere in the draft. So if a team has saved some money elsewhere, then he might be around and you go, okay, we can make this work. Yeah. And then again, we always say, like, if he ended up getting taken the 11th round, don't think of him as 11th round talent. Then it's more of like, take him in the 11th because of the mechanics of the draft, where you can make that run. But if you don't get it, you can then take a run at someone else who's your 14th round pick.
One proxy I use too, and this is more useful after signing day and we have all the bonuses, but you can just sort the signing bonuses in descending order and then look at the slot values. And if you see a player signed for $500,000 and in wherever round they were taken, you have a pretty good idea that the team viewed that player as a 5th round pick, for example. So that it's almost always just look at the money after the fact, especially for these like big overslot guys in the 5+ round range.
And to be honest, a little bit in the first round too, because you'll see guys who go in the first round, and it's like part of the reason they went where they did. Hey, you can always say you were a first round pick, but sometimes you do that because a team's like, well, but this player will take X, and that means we'll be able to spend on more later. So we're going to go even a little deeper than this, going on beyond the 6th round. At this point, we're just going to call it later round names to watch, partly because we said we rank them out to 500, we do others, but you get down to this level and precision really does kind of slide away. This is something where we try to line them up as best we can, but if a guy on this goes 182 and we have them at 217 or 250 or 320, don't be like, oh, that's a draft steal at that point.
Right. The buckets of tiers get increasingly wide the further you go down the board, and our ability to meaningfully separate players in those tiers is almost non-existent, I would say. So I'll start with one that you've probably heard this name from me before. This is cheeseball status for you.
This is cheeseball status for me, yeah, because again, just watched him play defense multiple times and came away saying, yep, Jake Lamdin, the Duke shortstop, can really play defense. Now, the other aspects of the game, we'll see.
Yeah.
And again, like, this is also, we are now also at the point where this is where the draft has also changed a little bit. We are now at the point where when you get down here, even with college players, especially, we won't spend a lot of time hanging on this now, but the NCAA rules that just passed essentially say for current players, you get to choose the best outcome for you. So if you're a player who, it's not going to be a lot of baseball players, it's the case, but whose baseball career, your college career began at age 20, and that means that you want to play to your 24, 25, you can, because you are already in. But at the
Gage is referring to the new 5-year eligibility rule.
But the flip side of that is if you are in school now and you were under the old system where you've got 5 years to play 4 if you redshirted for a year, now you've got 5 to play 5. And so one of the things I think that is going to mean when we get later on in the draft is that there are going to be players who, the further down you go in the draft, the more valuable college players will have a real tough decision, because when you get in that $150, $200 to $250,000 bonus range, a school, let's say, that's offering, in some cases, these players will be having full rides plus with NIL, that equation becomes a little bit closer. And especially when you throw in that on top of that, now you know that if you're a junior, you actually have 2 years of eligibility left. So next year, if you come back, you're not going to be the true senior sign that has no other options other than to sign. I do think it's going to get a little bit more complicated in the back here. But again, I was speaking of Jake Lamdin. I think he's one of the best defensive shortstops in this class.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to this level, I would say you get to the 7th, 8th round on, it is more about players. Now we are at the point where the players have clear, they either have one of two things. Either, in most cases, I would say the younger players, the higher ceiling players, are so far from that ceiling that you have no close to certainty that they're going to get there. It's the big power or the athletic outfielder in high school but he hasn't put it all together. And that's why, you could say, go to school and prove it, or we're going to take them now. And then the college players, it's the college players who have great gloves who can hit, but are first baseman who can't really play first base. It's those kind of things, right? And that's where I think Jake Lamdin, I do think that if you said, is this guy going to hit enough to make it all work? I don't know. But if you said, is this guy going to field enough to make it work? I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be enough to kind of give him a chance to figure it out as a hitter. I don't know if you have anything to add on Lambda, but I know you have a guy you wanted to talk about too.
Yeah, I'll just echo your thoughts on Lamdin being an impressive defender. I don't know how teams are valuing these org type players who are just elite defensive shortstops. Maybe there's fewer spots for those guys in minor league ball, but it certainly would be really fun to see him pan out and make strides as an offensive player, purely to see him in a big league lineup making defensive plays, because I do think he is a dynamic and fun defender to watch. But yeah, maybe my favorite player to talk about in this specific podcast is Gage Peterson, who's a right-handed pitcher at Appalachian State. I think you get the credit for having our lowest ranked player here in this conversation. So kudos to you, JJ, for really going deep. But Gage Peterson is a guy we have ranked just outside of the top 300. So he's certainly not a household name by any means. But as I wrote him up and as I talked to scouts and as I watched some video on him, he was another player who was like, man, if you can get him the 8 to 12 round range where we have him ranked, I would be thrilled with this. He is a big physical pitcher, 6'5", 220-pound frame with a physical frame to dream on, and also fastball and release traits to dream on. I think what you're buying if you take Peterson is a really exciting fastball. And it's exciting not because he's lighting up radar guns. He's sitting 90-94. But it's an exciting pitch because even at that below average right-handed starter fastball velocity, he misses bats because he has elite extension. He has well above average riding life on that pitch. I believe he averaged just north of 20 inches of induced vertical break. It's got some natural cutting life to it as well. It's more than 6.5 feet of extension on the fastball in particular. It's also a pitch that he threw for strikes at a pretty solid clip. So I think getting this sort of fastball from this frame for a college starter who actually performed pretty well this spring. I mean, pretty well might be underselling his line. He started 15 games. He threw 85 innings. He posted a 3.28 ERA. He had a 30% strikeout rate and a 10% walk rate. I think beyond the fastball, beyond the frame, beyond the performance, there are questions about the secondaries. I think there's the makings of solid secondaries. He throws a slider, a curveball, a changeup. I think they're all fine pitches. None of them are terrible, but I think all of them need to be improved. They need to be developed. Having him get to a more consistent secondary to pair with that fastball, and maybe even see him throw a little bit harder in the future, will help unlock him more. But I would be really excited if I was a fan of a team that has a track record of getting a lot out of college arms. And Gage Peterson was a team that was a player that my team drafted.
Again, I think that's the perfect example of you're talking about that. This is where we really are in balls of clay, where you're like, okay, there are attributes here. Now can we accentuate, develop some of the other attributes that this pitcher will need to become a big leaguer? But you got to like that there's a starting point here where you feel really good about one of the key components.
For sure.
I did want to answer I just pulled up. The great thing is we've been doing this for a long time. So like I just pulled up our 2022 draft reports. I look for plus defenders. I didn't look for gold glove. I look for plus. I'm just looking for words here. Plus defenders after 150, infielders, college infielders after 150. There was
this pulled from the master plan, or did you do database search? Oh, nice.
Jack Brannigan at Notre Dame, and Jim Jarvis at Alabama. And I say this because, okay, Jim Jarvis has made it up with the Braves. Jack Brannigan's kind of like right there with the Pirates. Like these are guys who, here we are. It is 5 years later, basically now 4 years later, I should say 4 years later, 5 seasons later, but 4 years later. And both of them are still kind of like, neither of them I think are ever going to be stars in the big leagues or anything like that. But if you said, well, what did they develop into? These are guys who very much did develop into useful pro players.
Yeah.
Who, again, Jarvis,
Jim Jarvis, 11th rounder, big leaguer, whatever he does, I feel like you can kind of write that one as a success.
So like that's where I do think that when we say like, well, what are these, attributes like that kind of stand out? Like there's a lot to be mined there from looking at past years and all.
I also mentioned this at the top of the podcast, and I did have some time to look it up as we were talking, but our number 500 from the 2023 class was Pascal Ferraris, a shortstop out of Western Carolina. He was the 614th pick of the 2023 draft. So that was Mr. Relevant on both our list and the actual draft. And just some fun trivia that, again, I don't think that's ever going to happen again. If it does, I'll be thrilled again.
I will say, again, I know that we are the geekiest of the geeky when it comes to this stuff, right? But like when you look, like I've got the 2022 master plan up, and you say, well, why do you guys rank 500 guys, right? Okay. Ethan Fry, I should say, who's basically Astros outfielder now, was 499 on the 2022 master plan when he was still a catcher in a Louisiana high school. Judd Uttermark, who's had a long college career, was number 492 out of Charlotte Christian. Joseph Zvira, I'm going to mispronounce Zwerwa.
Just don't even think of the DZ with that one, just
Zwerwa. But he is just joined our top 100 as the Orioles. He was number 485 on that list. You can you just kind of scroll through this, and there are absolutely names who this is the last time that we ever talked about them. I'm not saying that there's not, but you could just scroll through, and Pierce George was 439, a high school arm. He's a 100-mile-an-hour dude now in the White Sox, prospects out of the bullpen. And then you could really go. The thing that's also that always is both fun and could drive you crazy is when you get into the list of guys like Brendan Summerhill was number 570 on this list. He didn't make the 500, who ends up being a prominent dude who's now a Rays prospect. Michael Ferret was at Providence, was in that kind of like 570 600 range. Adrian Rodriguez, shortstop at Puerto Rico Baseball Academy. I believe that is the Texas A-Rod now, is it not? Who's the shortstop at Texas now? Like, you can go down and you will see names like even going beyond the five, because we do have on a normal year, I'd say we have about 1,100 names that we kind of have at least put into the database for us.
Yeah. I think that Adrian Rodriguez might have been a different one.
Okay. Maybe a different one. Sorry. Numbers in our kind of like 780 range. Andrew Fisher, third baseman at Wall Township High School in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Colby Shelton, shortstop at Bloomingdale High School in Valerico. Like, again, these are guys that I've just written up. We've just written up for top 30s right now. And, that's what makes this fun. We could keep doing this. We could be talking about who are the most interesting guys that we don't currently have on the 500, and we could do that.
Yeah, we could.
Probably would not be our most well-received podcast, but it would still be fun.
Yeah, for a select few, maybe. But no, this was good.
A little bit of logistical stuff just to let everybody know. The next piece we will have coming up on the Draft Podcast feed is a staff draft that we will roll out that we did this last year as well, but where we're going deep. We're not going first round. We're going beyond that. I don't know if we're going to talk about every single player for every that we pick, because we're going, a lot longer than that, but we will talk about a lot of them. And that will be the next draft pod, which will be a little bit out of schedule of normal. We're going to get that up. I think our plan is to have that up Monday, so that we'll have that up for the full week to get you ready for the draft. And then when it comes to, I say that also though, because when it comes to the draft pod, we try to have this out Friday at 5 a.m. on the podcast feed, 9 a.m. on the draft feed. That's still going to be our goal for next week, but at the same time, Carlos is going to be very busy. I'm going to be bouncing around. We'll see if that, we that's going to be essentially our bonus pod next week, because we will have the staff draft one. So I'm just saying that in advance, that there's also other stuff that we'll have. But we'll have a lot. We will have so much over at baseballamerica.com all week. And by the way, if you haven't checked it out this week, we had a mock draft this week that Carlos did. We have draft intel that Carlos did that you should check out. We expanded our senior sign list to reports now for 75. As you are listening or watching this, we have rolled out an update to our high school rankings. I believe we're at 500 high school players with star ratings as well. So much. Check it all out at baseballamerica.com. And again, also check out Carlos. If you're watching this a little bit later, we will have Carlos will be on the MLB draft broadcast for day one.
Day one,
so,
rounds 1 through 4. Yeah.
And we're going to see about trying to do something that night. I don't know who all it'll be, but we've had fun doing some live shows and all. We did that with College World Series. We may see what we can do from a very busy time. Again, I say I don't know who all will be on it, because we're going to have a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. Putting the draft and the futures game running at the exact same time is both my dream and my nightmare at the very same time, because I want to pay attention to both with everything. But it'll be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to it. Any last words, Carlos?
No, I think there's just a ton of content to get you guys ready for the draft. So definitely check out the site over the next week or so. Check out the podcast feeds. If you want to rate and review the show, that's always really helpful for us. I know JJ's really active on the YouTube comments. So if you got anything you want to ask us, throw those over there. He'll do his best to answer you. But there's just a huge volume of content to produce and to consume. And hopefully on draft day, you guys will have all the information you need to get acquainted with the players your favorite teams will be taking. So I'm ready to get this show on the road. It's been a long time coming, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, we're already starting. Carlos has been watching the 2027s. We have to be juggling. We're doing a little bit of both, because you're at CNT a lot this week, and I may get out there the next day or two. It'd be good for me to see those guys. So even if we are going to bake, because it's feels like 100.
Hey, they're doing all night games, 7 innings now, so at least the sun is not roasting you the whole time. But it's warm, but it's nice to be out at the field.
But for Carlos, I'm JJ. So long, everybody.